Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars Rebels episode review. This one's going to be for Season 2, Episode 17, The Forgotten Droid. And yeah, this was I'd say surprisingly good episode. I went into this episode expecting it to be dreadful because the idea of a chopper-centric episode taking place immediately after last week's episode, which was like so important, to me was like stupid on behalf of the creators in terms of putting it where it is. I still ultimately think the placement of this episode is completely wrong given where we're meant to be. But I guess this episode leads into the next episode, which is going to set up them leaving for the finale. So it's kind of working out, but again, writing it so that like Chopper becomes a focus, like just before the big Vader Ahsoka stuff is Darth Maul, Ezra stuff, is very weird to me. But this episode, as like a standalone episode, perhaps if it was placed earlier on this season, was actually surprisingly good because we got actual character development out of droid characters, which we rarely, if ever, get. Now, the Clone Wars tried to do this a couple of times with like the Meeber Gascon episodes, and I think the droid's name was Whack, and you know, they really overdid that with way too many episodes. They had a couple of R2 episodes, and you know, R2 I think is probably one of the only droid characters who honestly like you care for as a character. C-3PO is like okay, but I don't think he is the strongest character. Ultimately, I think they were kind of aware that a lot of people are just like, okay, he tags along with R2 and is kind of slightly annoying, but R2 is the real star of that pair. While here, they went for a different type of droid relationship in that, yes, it's the astromech and the larger, kind of more humanoid droid, but it was a very different relationship in terms of the kind of personalities. It's like, it was like R2's personality taken up to an insane degree, which is basically what Chopper is, and then C-3PO's personality really toned down with more kind of attitude, is what AP5 was. And I think they dealt with a couple of interesting things in relation to droids in this episode, with the concept of, you know, restraining bolts, which we've had before, but we kind of make a big deal about it here when Chopper shoots off AP5's restraining bolt, and it's like a big deal that like it gives him now the potential to actually go against the Empire. He doesn't have to stick around. Like this mission that he's been given to protect the inventory, the cargo, and make sure it gets to wherever it needs to go safely. He now has the potential to choose to stay with the Empire or go with Chopper and potentially find people who actually care about him. And it was interesting because it presented this idea, kind of, they didn't really hit it home hard in the episode, but about Chopper. He doesn't have a restraining bolt, but Hera is his owner, and he always goes back to her. You know, he disobeys her at times, but he always comes back to her and considers her his master, even though there's no restraining bolt involved. And he gets this kind of personality aspect of droids out about them actually caring, feeling things for their masters, because we get the kind of, I suppose, full extent of the backstory on Chopper. We got a little bit of it in the Hera and her father episode, saying that she found it in the aftermath of the battle in Ryloth, and she kind of took it in or repaired it, sort of thing. But now we get the idea that Chopper was actually a clone trooper pilot's Y-wing astromech, and he crashed basically right outside Hera's front door, and she rushed out to save him, and ever since they've been together. And I really like the comparison that they made here between Chopper kind of showing off his master and saying, like, she cares for me, she, you know, lets me do things, but, you know, I'm free with her, basically. Compared to the Empire commander guy we had here, who was completely abusing AP5, you know, ordering to do this, to do that, you know, I'm in charge, I'm going to get you replaced as soon as possible, you know, and really just treating him like a slave, basically. Which brings up that concept as well, like, are droids mostly treated like slaves in the galaxy, or what? We primarily know our main droid characters as being friends, like Luke and R2, Anakin and R2 especially, and that sort of thing. So, it was just really interesting to get that, and it had like certain kind of bits of the whole Callus Zeb thing, that the Empire doesn't care about Callus and he's potentially doubting the Empire. We got that to some degree with AP5 here, in that he ultimately sides with Chopper and calls him a friend by the end of the episode, because Chopper cared about him and helped him become free of the Empire, because he knew that AP5 would be better off with the rebellion than with the Empire, and he made the choice to stick around, and even going as far as to, put himself on the line, sacrifice himself to get this information to the rebellion, because Chopper did care for him. And that's something that I don't think that this show has often managed to do, and that's get me invested emotionally in the characters, the new characters especially. Like in that sense, this episode was a little bit more emotional than, say, the Hera and Cham episode, the father-daughter reunion episode. I felt a little bit more emotion for this Chopper AP5 friendship than that important father-daughter thing, because of execution. This one was done a lot better than that one, in my opinion. I know probably some people will disagree with me, but I really wasn't the biggest fan of the way they went with the whole Cham Hera episode. So yeah, this episode, dealing with droids, was definitely very effective, and there was ultimately some plot stuff, as I kind of hinted at the start. This idea that they initially thought they had found a planet that was clear of Imperial forces, but AP5 basically revealed that no, recently that system has actually been reinforced with Empire ships, and it's actually really dangerous. It's basically a trap. And he actually manages to cross-reference the Rebels' intelligence with the Empire's intelligence to find a new system that is better. I can't remember what the name of the planet was. I think it's like Atalon or something like that. And I think the next episode is primarily going to revolve around them setting up base on Atalon, some incident happening, and then ultimately that leaving to Ezra, Ahsoka, and Kanan going to Malachor for the finale. So it seems to all be connecting all together. They're doing a decent job at actually placing these seemingly non-important episodes in somewhat of a plot-focused sense. But yeah, there's some nice action here, getting to see Chopper fight again. I don't think he's the best character, but his attitude towards things and his unique style is pretty interesting. That he's kind of a crazy droid in the way he's always swinging those two arms around the place, and especially him holding the extra leg the whole episode was really funny, because I was waiting for him to really build up some momentum and really smack that Imperial guy, but it was left towards the very end of the episode, where he just flies through the air, spinning his dome around, and just knocks the guy out. That was actually really impressive. I liked how that was done. And ultimately, like, the whole episode, like, they kind of hinted at this idea, that even Hera admitted it, that Chopper is kind of a very selfish droid when you think about it, and that she knew he was going to go after that leg because he wanted it to match his other one. But you compare that scene when he's taking the leg and how protective he is of it the whole episode, to the end when they reveal that they managed to repair AP5 by using pieces from that new leg. So Chopper was actually being very selfless here, in that this new leg that he went through so much to get, that basically caused this whole incident, he actually was willing to give it up for AP5 to be alive. So that friendship meant more to him than the new leg. So that was an important thing to have. It just showed that there's a little bit of emotional depth with Chopper there, beyond just being the kind of selfish, slightly violent and annoying droid. What else? I was going to say something. And yeah, I suppose, there is the whole thing about, like, why couldn't they have just swapped Chopper's new leg with his old leg and just taken the part of the old leg? They seem to be like different models, like mismatched, but I assume the same part would be in the other leg as well. But obviously they had to do it pretty quickly, so the fact that they had this random detached leg was easier to get the part out of. That's probably the explanation for that. But I don't know. There's something about it I would have preferred Chopper to ultimately have the more symmetric design and more clean design rather than the weird mismatched legs, which I never noticed actually before this episode that his legs actually were mismatched. But that's another thing. I assume that potentially that other leg is just a spare part that Hera had, and she replaced that when she was young, and that's one of the parts of, like, when the ship crashed, that was one of the parts that was damaged, and so the old leg is actually something Hera gave to him long ago, and that's kind of proof that he's her droid. But yeah, the other side of the episode was that we had the rebels kind of looking for fuel. That was the whole thing. They wanted to find fuel, to obviously refuel to get to this location that they needed to get to. But they were obviously under attack by the Empire, and we also got the return of Ketsu Onyo. I think that's her name. Really wasn't that important in the episode. Like, she just helped save the day a little bit and interacted a tiny bit with Sabine, but ultimately, like, it was like one of the least important cameos I've like ever seen in any show ever. Like, just this fairly important character to one of our main cast, and she just fires a few shots and leaves. It was just like, okay, cool, she's helping now, but there wasn't a lot of impact to that reappearance. But yeah, in the end, you know, they get back. Obviously, Chopper and AP5 have stolen a whole ship, and they all enter hyperspace to arrive at the Apollon or Athlon system. So, you know, we end in an interesting spot. I assume the next episode for sure has to take place on this planet, dealing with them trying to form a base here, because otherwise, this whole season and the setup for, like, the fleet has to get bigger, we have to get more fuel, we have to get more power, we have to do this, get intel, find a new base of operations. That kind of means nothing if we don't have any actual accomplishments here. I think a base kind of has to be formed in the next episode, before the end of the season at the very least. But I really do feel that the last two episodes have to be almost entirely focused on the Jedi stuff and like very little on the actual rebels. Like I'm thinking only maybe a scene at the very start and very end of the 1 hour finale should be about the rebellion. Everything else should be about Vader, Ahsoka, Maul, Ezra, Kanan, and Malachor, what's going on there. And of course, you know, this is set up from the previous episode as well, with Yoda telling Ezra to go there to get answers about, you know, should he fight or not? Is it right for Jedi to fight? And so on. So, yeah. Final thoughts are just that this was a kind of, I think ultimately like a poorly placed episode in the sense of like Chopper episode just before the finale. But given that it was a Chopper episode, it was actually pretty good compared to what it could have been. And I think it did manage to hit some emotional notes that some of the other episodes with seemingly more important things happening didn't manage to hit. The example, of course, I give is the Hera and Cham stuff, which I really didn't connect to all that much. To some extent, even the Sabine and Ketsu stuff from that episode earlier on in the season wasn't that great compared to this. This random friendship between Chopper, who we haven't really got any character development from up to now, and then this completely new droid, AP5, actually worked quite well for me. Now, obviously we end the episode with AP5 with the rebellion fully fixed and now part of it, and obviously the reveal is that he is a tactical droid also from the previous Republic, so he'll be very useful, I assume, in some ship-to-ship battles, coming up with tactics, and that he mentions he was the best tactician, and it was only like some of the generals going against him that basically made them lose battles, so he's actually really good at his job. So will they, like, I suppose, how much will they use AP5 going forward? I assume as a kind of buddy type character to Chopper, just to keep him calm down, I suppose. Just because I think Ezra is going on a much more serious path from here on out, and everything will get a lot more serious, so Chopper messing around with, like, Zeb, Kanan, Ezra, I don't think can really be that big of a thing going forward. So him more messing around with his droid friend makes a lot more sense than the stuff that the serious human characters are going through. So yeah, that's been the review of the Forgotten Droid. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. I really want to know, because a lot of the reviews I've seen for this episode online from some of the bigger sites have been very negative, whereas, like, I actually really enjoyed this episode. So I really want to know what the rest of the fandom's thoughts is on this episode. Like, did you hate it, or were you kind of surprised like me? But yeah, that's been the review. Thanks for watching, and bye.